I was thinking to myself, this is some serious Ghostbuster type footage. I shot it moments before this torrential downpour. You know, the kind of downpour where the rain is actually bouncing off the ground and going upwards. Anyways, welcome to part 20 of Project 308.
Alrighty, looking at the driver's side control arms. This is the lower, that's the upper. Now what I was doing before for the rear was I was sandblasting them immediately, simply because I hate working with rust. The problem being is that all the rubber, because it's decrepit, all these little bits and pieces were getting into my sandblast cabinet and getting into the sand, and then they were causing the sandblaster to clog up, making extra work. So what we're going to do this time is we're actually going to take it apart and push out these bushings first, and then we'll go and sandblast it. And I've got new ball joints for it, so we're just going to pop these out early on, get them out of there, because I will be replacing those as well. What? Of course I am. I just pushed record on my video.
For those regular viewers, you've already seen me cutting the welds out of these bushings before. But you know what? I just kind of like the slow-mo footage. It's kind of cool. What's this?
Alright, so I've just discovered that there's a spacer on the one inside bushing on the upper control arm. I'm going to take a picture of this as it sits right now so I make sure I put it back in the correct position. Huh, didn't know that. Learned something new. Alright, so I definitely need to pay strict attention to these spacers on these bushings. When I look at that spacer, I can see one there, I can see one there, one there, and one there. So they all seem to be uniform on these two control arms. However, on the control arms on the driver's side, they definitely have something weird going on here. I pop these out. You can see there was one there and one there, as I expected it to be similar to the other side. However, right here I've only got one really thick one there and nothing there. I potentially have an issue with the caster, that somebody's tried to shim that arm backwards a bit. So definitely got to pay attention to that and not lose those shims and put them back in the exact spot that I took them out.
Of course, I'm sitting at home in front of my computer editing this video, and I'm like, should I take this whole part out? Oh boy. Oh, just wait for it.
So I'm looking at the screen while you're looking at me, but I know that subscribe button is somewhere over here or over there. And I've also come to realize that if I ask you to subscribe, you will, but if I don't ask you, you won't. So here I am asking you because, you know, it makes my ego that much bigger. But it does help my channel. Thanks.
I'm revisiting the sandblast cabinet, but I can't just give you me dancing. I gotta try and find something new for you to watch. I searched all over the shop for a mason jar or something like that. Couldn't find one, so I settled on a bag. You know, the GoPro in the plastic bag trick. Everybody's done it, right? I was decently surprised at how good this footage turned out, considering I'm shooting through a plastic bag. You know, it's actually kind of mesmerizing. Two to 3 hours later, here I am. I enjoyed the soft sounds of Fleetwood Mac Rumors, but you know what? I can't use their music in the video because then I'll get a copyright strike. So I present you Dancing in the Tub by Family Kush, and of course, what would a concert be without some pyrotechnics? Let's bake this arm at 350 degrees, and while we wait the 20 minutes, let's stare at the Ferrari. Timer's up, let's see what we got.
Well, thankfully I record everything, which has its benefits. And the benefit right now is I get to double check something when I'm just not quite sure. I was about to push the bushings back in the upper arm here, and I just found it odd that every other control arm has 2 spacers and this one only has 1. So I went back and I reviewed my footage, and I've come to realize that I have somehow, in a moment of distraction, misplaced one of these smaller spacers. And I've spent the last hour of my life, hour and a half, scouring this area right around here where I was working trying to find it. Now I had the young fellow cleaning in here, and I may have accidentally knocked it on the ground, and he may have accidentally cleaned it up because I can't find it anywhere. So I could order one or I could make one. Well, it looks to be just 10 gauge metal. I use my little gauge here. That's 10. That's 10. Magnetic, I think it's just standard steel. And it's 10 gauge sheet, which I happen to have a lot of. So, how about we make one? We're going to use this one as a guide. Oh, there's the front lower valance. And the hood, go figure that. Alright, so I am Canadian after all, and I do prefer to work in the metric system. So, let's see what we got. I got 30 millimeters on the inside. And 42 on the outside. Now I could just use a hole saw and probably make one of these in the lathe, but hey, I got a CNC plasma cutter, so why wouldn't I use it, man? Software, computers, cool cutting things. Yes!
I'm going to design my spacer to be 1 millimeter undersized on the inner bore. That way I can throw it into the lathe and approach my size cautiously so that I have a nice tight fit. One final check, simulating the tool path, and I'm going to head back downstairs. The 3 original remaining spacers are actually a pretty tight fit on these bushings, so I'm actually going to use my handy dandy 3-inch vise to push the spacer back onto the bushing before I put the bushing in the control arm. Whew, that was a mouthful. My new spacer did, in fact, turn out pretty darn decent. And if I hadn't lost it in the first place, well, I'd have none of that cool video to show you of me making one. I'm gonna call this one a draw. I prefer to work corner by corner because I can use the other side as a guide for reassembly. Being able to powder coat in-house, as mediocre as it is, allows me to do this, because if I had to send all these parts out for powder coating, I'd have to take all the arms, take them apart, throw them in a box, and figure it out later, which I just don't like doing. Now, most cars from this generation use shims of some variety to adjust the camber and the caster, and this prancing horse has more than its fair share of shims. I'm going to hope that the alignment that was done on this who knows when was correct, because if it's not, I've got to backtrack and take all these shims back out and try and shim things one way and shim things the other way. It could be a real pain in the you-know-where. Alright, so the front brake rotor is in 2 separate pieces. Now I'm going to try and save this rotor. It's pretty corroded, but there is a fair amount of meat left to it, so I should be able to cut through it. We'll see. I don't know, but I'm going to separate the hub from the rotor. Now I could resurface it with the hub still attached, but I don't want it to work free because I don't know how tightly it's pressed. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to separate this rotor from the hub. That's the hub, that's the brake rotor. Now we could theoretically put this in the press and separate it, but I'm assuming you at home don't have a press. So let's try this little trick right here. So we've got a hole right there, and we have this 8mm by 1.25 pitch metric bolt, so 8 millimeters, and the thread pitch is 1.25, I think, pretty sure it is. And we're going to thread that in there, and we're going to see what happens. Okay, so it's just bottomed out now, so I'm going to have to put the camera back into its tripod holder, and because I need both hands. So basically, this threaded hole in the hub allows me to put pressure on the rotor to kind of separate it. So by working it back and forth and tapping a little bit here and tapping a little bit there, I've managed to break it free. It wasn't that tight and didn't really need a press anyways. It just needed some little magic and some lubrication, and it came right out.
Everybody, nobody ever. Alright, you probably can't see that, but it says 20 millimeters right there. So let's see what we're starting off with. So we're just under 22 millimeters right now, and our minimum specification is 20 millimeters. So we got lots of room. And we are 21, right on the money. So I'm still a millimeter above the spec. When I started, before I cut it, it was 21 3/4 millimeters, so just under 22. So I took about 3/4 of a millimeter off the whole rotor. So that's good, good. So that rotor is good. So I'm going to clean that up, see if I need bearings or not, and check that out. So I'm going to get you to clean the bearings. So you just changed all the fluid in the tank, right? Okay. In the Varsol tank? You just changed the fluid in the Varsol. Yeah. So there's fluid in it now, correct? So I'm going to get you to clean these parts. And so you're going to put a pair of gloves on. Okay. So I want this piece here, this piece here. Okay. I'm gonna come.
Okay, so my hub and my rotor are good. My two bearings look brand new, so I'm going to try and save those. I'm just going to change the inner seal and the locking nut on the outside. I'm going to save